Hello and welcome to this installment in our series of videos designed to bring you more information about ACPE's new certification process. Today's session will focus on understanding competencies within a conceptual framework. Our presenter today is Tahara Akmal. Tahara is an ACPE Certified Educator and is currently the Director of CPE at Reading Hospital School of Health Sciences in West Reading, Pennsylvania. She served on the Certification Reform Work Group and is currently a member of the implementation team. As this session is part of a series of educational videos, we invite you to visit the certification page of the ACPE website, where you will find links to the other videos as well as any documents that are referenced. It is now my pleasure to turn it over to Tahara.
Hello, and thank you for watching our webinar. This is really an exciting time for our organization as we implement this new approach to how we certify educators. We recognize with this approach and transition that there comes questions. So our goal is with this webinar is to provide information and give some clarification on the new certified educator process. Our goal is to provide some information, and we're going to go over 4 areas with this webinar. 1 is an overview of competency-based education. 2, how it works, what the process looks like. 3, key features and highlights. And 4, assessment, how competencies are assessed. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So we're just going to give an overview of the process. So to start, competency-based learning refers to systems of instruction, assessment, grading, and academic reporting that are based on students demonstrating that they have learned the knowledge and skills that are expected for them to learn as they progress through their education. A competency is an outcome, a goal that the aspirant achieves within the learning process. By the end of the educational experience, each student should have achieved a goal. Classes, opportunities, and assessments all help students achieve the specified outcome. So competency-based education is the standardization of outcomes with the flexibility in how learners achieve them. Competency-based education focuses on the learner with outcome goal assessment occurring within the learning process. So the general goal of competency-based learning is to ensure that students are acquiring the knowledge and the skills that are deemed to be essential to success in their education program, keeping in mind that individuals have different learning styles and for that to be considered in the process. So what do competencies include? So aptitudes, what the learner already possesses, natural ability that prepares a person to perform a task. Attitudes, ways of thinking or behaving that are required to perform a task. The skills that are required or their acquired ability or experiences needed to perform a task. And knowledge, the information and understanding needed to perform a task. So characteristics of competencies. So there's 2, visible and hidden. Visible or explicit are characteristics or skills and knowledge that the aspirant possesses. These are most easily developed, necessary, but not sufficient alone by themselves. The hidden or implicit characteristics of competencies are more difficult to develop and differentiates excellence in performance. So hidden characteristics include behavior, values, concept of self, motives, and traits. So how does this all work? How does this all come together? Let's look at that. So then let's look at the nuts and bolts and how this all comes together as we start thinking about competency-based education. So implications. So curriculum and assessment flows from the competencies, not vice versa. So the design of the curricula and assessment model flows from the competencies, not the other way around. An understanding of the competency is required in order to develop the curriculum and the assessment model. What this requires is a thorough definition of what a competency looks like, along with tools and systems for assessment. We're going to talk a little bit about milestones. A milestone is a significant point in development. Milestones are growth targets expected to be achieved at specific stages of the education process. Benefits of the milestones. 1, it provides learners with a clear path of progression. They know what to expect and what's expected of them. There are no surprises. The milestones allow for rich, formative feedback throughout the learning process. The learner knows, based on feedback given by the team around them, what's expected of them. And then also milestones define specific behaviors or evidence that can focus the assessment. For example, how an outcome is measured has to do with an assessment model developed from the behaviors needed to meet the outcome. So let's look at knowledge, skills, and attitudes, this framework. So knowledge. The aspirant learns under knowledge theories, education and curriculum development, spiritual care, theology, and personality development. Under skills, they learn information gathering, cultural agility, the ability to use knowledge and information, management skills, and teaching skills. Attitudes are professionalism, collegiality, cultural humility. Those key, important, this framework of knowledge, skills, and attitudes is the foundational competencies that the aspirants are going to be required to have. Okay, so now let's go and look at the key features of a competency-based education program. Okay, so advancement is based on mastery of the competencies. So a promotion plan, moving from one phase to another. For example, transitioning from phase 1 to phase 2 in the new process. Competencies achieved in phase 1 move learners to phase 2. Performance indicators, indicators that are allowing the aspirant to know that they're on track and moving through the process. And again, part of that process is assessment. Okay, now we'll look at measurable and explicit competencies, and they're based on performance outcomes, action-oriented language. For example, the learner acquires knowledge and demonstrates a skill or develops an ability. That's the language for competencies. Alignment with the ACPE standards. And then there's the assessment rubric to determine if the learner has demonstrated a skill, developed an ability, or acquired knowledge necessary to move ahead in the education process. Next, we have meaningful assessment. So formative and summative assessment. Again, we're going through a process, or the aspirant's going through a process with ongoing assessment throughout, summarizing and forming in their development as an educator and being assessed throughout the process. There's benchmarks of achievement. For example, achievement of competencies, meeting goals, moving from one phase to another. Those are benchmarks of achievement. Demonstration or exhibition of a skill or an ability, for example. And again, the assessment rubric to determine if the learner has demonstrated a skill, developed an ability, acquired knowledge necessary to move ahead in the education process. This next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about support, personalized and timely support. Again, this process recognizes that individuals learn in different ways. So the curriculum scope and sequence is developed with the learner in mind. So we want to keep that adult education model in mind, that different students are going to have different strengths and growing edges in different parts of their education process. So we want to be mindful of that and have a curriculum that is keeping that in mind, that students learn in different ways. Distinct learning modules and units, again, as indicated in the previous slide, design of the curricula and assessment model flows from the competencies, not the other way around. Progression pathways, again, assessment following a certain pathway for success. Within this new process, students and aspirants, they still have create learning goals. And self-pacing within an established framework. Competency-based education focuses on the learner and ensures the students acquire the required knowledge and skills essential in their success. This means a structured process that recognizes that individuals have different learning styles. So this does not mean that a learner progresses through the education process at their own pace and in their own time frame. At any point in the education process, the certified educator and the aspirant can assess and reassess where they are, but the time frame is established. But again, we do have to keep in mind that students learn at different pace. So the learning outcomes emphasize development and application. Again, we have the performance indicators, like we talked about earlier, through assessment and evaluation, alignment with ACPE standards, and again, the assessment rubric to determine if the learners demonstrated skills, developed an ability, and acquired knowledge. So the next slide, we're going to talk about how the competencies are assessed. And if you have some time, here on this first slide, you can see an article. Please review the article referenced here for information on competency-based postgraduate training. The article is cited there, and this article is a great resource to learn about competency-based education as postgraduates. So let us go on. So Entrustable Professional Activities, also known as EPA. EPAs, or Entrustable Professional Activities, represent the routine professional life activities of a chaplain. So the concept of an entrustable means that a practitioner has demonstrated the necessary knowledge, skills, and attitudes and abilities to be trusted to independently perform this activity. In other words, a student is now able to perhaps supervise a group on their own. They've demonstrated all of the necessary competencies to go to phase 2 and now independently have their own group. So entrustable training activities, or also known as ETAs, or entrustable training activities, can help to define the important benchmarks in a certified educator candidate's development. ETAs in a certified educator program may mean a CEC has demonstrated the necessary knowledge, skills, and attitudes to be trusted to perform this activity without constant or direct supervision, like we said before. All right, on our next slide, using ETAs to assess competence, they are critical moments in the CEC's training process. Again, the milestones and benchmarks, knowing that the aspirant is moving through the process and meeting specific milestones and outcomes. Representative of developmental progression, again, moving through the process For example, from admissions to phase 1 to phase 2. Manageable for training programs, for busy, different. You would continue on with the way you're doing things. And it's a logical assessment for your stakeholders. It's not anything, again, different than what you've been doing before. The process is a little bit different, but it's not requiring any additional work on your part. Okay, and we'll move on.